Okay. I'd like to go ahead and call to order the Town of Rocky Hill Open Space and Conservation Commission regular meeting for Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. I'd like to go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay, thank you. We can skip public, there's nobody here. I'd like to go on to the next item, actions taken, minutes presented for approval for February 12th, 2025.
Question and possible amendment. I'm listed as an alternate. I don't think I am anymore, but as of
You-
February, was I or not? Thought I was moved in January.
Nope,
Nope.
Jody's
Okay.
still there.
Yep. Never mind then.
Well, wait a minute. When was Jody's last meeting? Do you
Oh,
remember?
it's been a while. I was looking to
Was
see if
it
it's in the
February?
notes about me being, because we did officially make the comment, but I don't see it in the notes.
Okay.
That needs to be
Can we go
noted.
ahead and just double check that? And if it was, can we move, excuse me, Melissa up to regular, please? Okay.
One other small comment on page 2, there's a typo in the paragraph starting, Commissioner Kaplan also stated. There's a sentence, the third line, instructions to be included on. I think it's included on. Minor thing.
Okay. Okay.
The actions taken and the minutes presented for the February 12th, 2025 meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Yes, and Commissioner Beatty will be voting in place of Commissioner Brown. Okay, any other further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Nope. Okay, that passes. All right, next item is discussion of the 2025 Plan of Conservation and Development. And I will turn the floor over to David.
Good evening. Kim Ritchie was planning on attending tonight to speak with us. However, she had to go home ill this afternoon. We did have some discussion, and she gave me some of her notes to share. So I'll work off of that for starters. Basically, Connecticut General Statutes 8-23 requires that the Plan of Conservation and Development be updated every 10 years. So she's been working on this. They've been doing the update in-house. And as part of the update, they did a survey. They sent out a survey to residents. They received over 500 responses. Some of the responses that pertain to this commission were the environment, to preserve more open space and farmland, to connect them, sustainability, low-impact development, natural resource protection, complete streets, creation of the town center, arts, culture, and Rocky Hill's identity. Some specific action items that she wanted to discuss were functions of this commission, Open Space Conservation Commission / Inland Wetlands. A little history is the Open Space Conservation Commission at a meeting in April 1964, there was a discussion and motions to purchase land near Ferry Park. There was a meeting in November 1964 discussing acquisition of Buckley Park. February 1965, the Open Space and Conservation Commission plans acquisition for Ferry Park expansion, acquisition for right-of-way for Buckley Park, acquisition of land for school recreational sites in West Rocky Hill, and indexing of all open spaces. After that, the Inland Wetlands Watercourse Act came into effect, and inland wetlands has become this commission's primary duties. No longer, focusing on open space as it once did. Now it's currently, seems to be handled by the Land Acquisition and Farmland Preservation Commission. So it's a committee appointed by the council. They're meeting right now in another room, actually. But the open space discussions, acquiring the open space, goes through them and not, it may get run through us for an opinion, but it's primarily not through this commission.
That's the farmland acquisition?
Well, it's open space and farmland.
Open space and farmland.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, when, money is brought in, actually, they did a bond, I think it was a $10 million bond for acquiring open space, so that they can have money available should parcels, suitable parcels come available. And they go through them and they decide which ones to pursue. We don't have a part of that conversation anymore. Back in the 60s, we did. And it's felt that there's a redundancy between this commission and that committee as far as the, determining parcels to acquire and to acquire or preserve. So part of the draft POCD is to investigate or, look into that as far as the roles of each, and maybe if it's a redundancy, maybe decide one or the other. Other specific actions, action items, riverfront property and access and preserving that, what we have. Help promote a VOAG curriculum in the school system. Preservation of scenic resources and a townwide drainage study update. On that last item, the drainage study update, we tried pursuing or initiating that. Our last study was done in 1976, I believe. There's obviously been a lot of development since then, and when we had the flooding in 2023, it became apparent, some of the issues, and we tried pursuing some grants, but, everybody else who was impacted was pursuing those same grants. We are still looking into them, but, and it's a lot of money to get a study done. So we were looking at, I think we have 11 watersheds in town, and we were looking at prioritizing the top 4, in that area, and working on that, and then prioritize the other areas. That's still in discussion, and it is a goal of ours to do, and that's going to be incorporated in the draft POCD. Items that I brought up to her attention or discussed with her were the LID, low impact development requirements. We have a brand new stormwater quality manual, 2024 stormwater quality manual, as well as a 2024 sediment and erosion control manual. There's a chapter, I think it's chapter 5 in the stormwater quality manual, really has a lot of information for low impact design, considerations for design, and ratings for the designs to help guide commission. So, applications coming in, if they're not resolved in staff comments, you'll start hearing more of that as we compare applications against these new guidelines. We're also, as part of our MS4 permits, our stormwater permit, we're having we're looking to track all our changes in total impervious area, direct disconnection of impervious areas. What that means is more use of rain gardens, infiltration, groundwater recharge, all the way down to homeowners, disconnecting their downspouts from drains that are tied into our catch basins so that they drain across the lawn. So we'll probably be incorporating what Weathersfield does, is require on the plans a table listing how much impervious area is being disconnected so we can better track it. We've done some on some of our town projects. Last year, Autumn Circle, Winter Lane, and that, we disconnected a bunch that were tied in. On some of the school parking lots, we've added island to reduce impervious coverage. It's ongoing, and we're just trying to come up with an easy way to track that. And that's a requirement. The MS4 permit's been updated. Those changes go into effect this year with more, we're in 25, go into effect this year. And it's no real significant changes. However, they are looking to, a lot of towns are falling short on that. And the whole permit is an unfunded mandate on these towns. And our water testing and everything else comes out of our budget. So it's hard to do it all when there isn't money available. Is what it is. The goal for that disconnection of impervious areas is 2% a year.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are there avenues in our current regs to require or suggest or guide applicants to start looking into, at least if they're in the upland review area, to start using less impervious and creating more LID, more green space, more?
Well, right now, our regulations, our zoning regulations refer to the stormwater quality manual,
Right.
and it gives the previous one or latest edition. The regulations will be updated after the POCD is finalized. The regulations are going to undergo some changes, and that'll take place in there. We may want to incorporate more of that in our regulations. And if the discussion is had regarding the open space acquisition and preserving open space, right now, our regulations have nothing in them about considerations or anything like that. So that could be some changes in our regulations.
I know I've seen those in other, like maybe not, other bylaws in other towns and states, so.
That's most of what she said, and as well as some of my comments. They will be having a public hearing next month, the beginning of next month, the first meeting of theirs next month, that people can attend or submit information for, and she encourages this commission or its members to do so.
Okay. All right, does anybody else have any questions for Dave on the, good?
Actually, a couple of little things. When you mentioned riverfront properties, have we heard anything from the Foundry lately?
Not that I'm aware of.
And their permit runs out now to like 2030 or something?
Yeah, it was given like a
The
14-year
COVID.
extension,
Yeah, okay. So, I looked at the map in the draft copy, and there's very little white land, the vacant land left in the town. I also read through there that we have about 5% affordable housing, and if you're less than 10%, we could run into somebody who comes in and says, we're just going to ignore all your zoning laws, call this affordable housing.
Yeah, that's an 830G application.
Yeah.
We've had 4 of those in the last year or two.
Yeah, and that the more apartment buildings we put up and everything else, the more out of reach that number's going to be.
Yeah, you're constantly chasing
Yeah.
that number. The more dwelling units you create, the percentage, you're constantly chasing that
Yeah.
number.
Right, I think West Hartford or Newington had a proposal, and they said, well, we've recalculated and we're at like 10.02, and the applicant pulled the permit.
Problem solved.
Well, yeah, so that's my question, because when I was reading through there, they also showed from like single-family duplexes, triplexes, and then they had these like bungalows with a common area. Is there any way we can like encourage growth like that? One common lawn for everybody ringing around it to get higher density?
Well, Kim's been very involved and active as far as affordable housing. And, between webinars, seminars, discussions with other professionals as far as how to reach what they call middle housing, where it's not, and affordable, a lot of people confuse affordable housing with,
Section 8.
Section 8 or subsidized housing. It is not. It's just at I believe it's 70% of the median income level. That's still not a cheap,
No,
not a cheap
it's
rent.
not. No.
No.
So trying to find, she's been working very hard on that, trying to come up with ideas for that, and that's reflected in the draft POCD.
But then again,
And back to your other comment about very little vacant land, just because it's not vacant right now doesn't mean it can't be vacant in the
Right.
future. So,
Well, that was a follow-up because we have a lot of farmland in town, and I don't know how much of the development rights have been bought up and haven't been bought up.
We have an inventory of all that.
Yeah. So,
one comment on the affordable housing, a developer can come in and not come in under the affordable housing, and they can do whatever they want.
well, no, if they,
Not whatever they want, but,
they can build whatever they want
Yeah.
because they meet the laws. It's just
Right.
when someone comes in and says, well, 30% of this is affordable housing, therefore, we don't have to follow any zoning laws.
right.
And that's the law.
Yep.
Correct.
They still have to follow inland wetlands.
Yes,
Yes.
they're not exempt from inland wetlands.
Yeah.
Correct.
As you're all
We can
aware.
attest.
Oh, God, we're all aware.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it for me. I wish you guys luck.
Anybody else have any Go ahead, Kurt. Derek.
As written, the language, there's a table on page 25 that talks about creating an open space system and talks about leaders and partners. And it does say that the OSCC would lead in seeking to connect new and existing and new open space and recreation areas, establishing a series of trails, acquiring property whenever property near the river becomes available. Like, the language seems to suggest that OSCC.
That's the current POCD.
This is the current
Yeah.
POCD.
Yeah.
So this draft seems to assume that the OSCC would have some role in acquiring new land. How does that become a reality? Is that a town council decision, or?
I believe so, because the current committee that does the land acquisition is appointed by the town council.
Correct.
They're meeting in the other room right now. So, it needs to be decided how we're to proceed would need to be decided by the town council.
And I suppose there's like, they have a split purpose, right? Like, it's open space, but it's also potentially for farmland. And one could imagine that this body would be focused on open space and they could be focused primarily on farmland.
Possibly, yeah.
Maybe.
Yep, yeah.
I think we would make the suggestion and present it to them, right? Something
Yeah,
like that.
that's something that you could bring up when the public hearings start.
Just to note that there is a lot of language here and about like raising awareness for trails and things of that nature. I think this is really exciting. I attended a meeting earlier this week called Connections in the River, which was a bunch of different organizations from like Rocky Hill and our neighbors talking about this big vision of having bike and pedestrian linkages between the various towns. So,
One obstacle to that here is the Meadows properties with the issues in the past where the roads had to be closed to the public.
Right.
Pedestrians can go through, the problems that the farmers had, and the farmers have real concerns that if that greenway comes south from Weathersfield through, along the river where
yeah.
it's a perfect place for it, how to do it in a way that protects the farmers
Yeah.
and their properties,
And I know that there was some discussion about this in 2021. It'd be interesting to revisit how we might do that. And I know that's not the focus of this particular meeting, but
Well, and part of that, is the connectivity of open spaces,
Public access.
and, I'll leave it at that.
Sure,
That's it.
sure. Like I said, I know we don't need to get into it now, but it does seem like this, that sort of conversation would fall under, if we choose to try to achieve the goals that are listed out in this table, that's an issue that might need to be revisited.
Right, well, and those goals, they're gonna be in the new P O C D as well. And maybe the priorities are gonna change, those priorities are from 10 years ago.
This is the current
The
draft.
current, right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, what items have been acted on out of all those
Yeah,
different things? There's, 4 or 5 pages of those
Yeah.
goals and who's responsible and that, maybe the priorities will change in the new P O C D.
I know I asked a question, but I got more. So, one of the other things it talked about is, grants and things like that, and, I push for grants. But, the town, I think, is looking to get a grants administrator, is that true, or no?
I'm not aware of
Oh,
an
okay.
active search. We did
I'm
have,
thinking of something different.
we did have a part-time
Or
one.
maybe
I
that's
don't-
what I was thinking. Because there are, the idea of the removal of impervious, that will help with drainage and improving conditions is something that I'm sure there are grants out there that would be available. Now, a lot of them have match, and that makes it, difficult, but, the drainage studies, I think it was mentioned that you were gonna try to get grants for that. And then, culvert replacements and things like that, that would improve all of that sort of things. There are lots of grants. I do think it's worth getting a part-time grant person or something back. I don't know if that's something to consider in the future, to help with a lot of these initiatives, looking for open space.
What would you call that title, Grant?
Administrator, yeah, administrator.
I mean, that's one of the,
There are consultants that do it.
right now,
but-
we have in our office, just through our office, I believe, our director's administering 13 grants right now.
Yeah,
And it's-
exactly.
And there's a lot of paperwork.
Exactly,
that
there
goes
is.
with those
There
grants.
is.
There's the
No.
the quarterly updates and everything else.
And I know that a lot of times there's disadvantaged towns have more, get more. But, I look at some of the bigger cities, like I do a lot of work for Stanford. They get grants for everything. I mean, granted, they're
Well,
a bigger
our proximity
town
to
and
the
a
river
disadvantage.
opens us up to more
Exactly.
opportunities from the Long Island Sound all the way up.
Exactly. Exactly.
One of the issues like I had mentioned to you was with the number of grants we currently have and the financial constraints that the town is in right now.
Yeah.
Is any grants that we want to pursue would be fully funded grants, not matching grants,
Yeah,
or maybe a
that's fine.
20/80 type grant.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah,
'cause, it's, the money's not there.
yeah, and I'm aware
But
the
unfortunately, every
tightness
town
of our
is in the
budget,
same,
too. Yeah,
you
the
know.
tightness of your budget, you don't want to increase it to make everybody upset and make their, the mill rates go up and things like that, but yeah.
Can the grants administrator be funded by a grant? And then,
Yeah. Yeah,
There may, you know, our,
There's so many grants. I
our
just
our
wish there was
town
somebody
manager
who
has,
was better.
has a wealth of experience in grants.
Okay.
And we do have a new economic development and marketing type person who's getting involved in some of that. I don't know her full extent. Her position could have evolved into something like that
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah. And one of the other thing I just want to make note is there were very many mentions of how important wetlands are to the town. It wasn't mentioned specifically, you said natural resources, but wetlands were specifically mentioned in the survey as being important to the town, so I thought it was important to mention that.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay, well, we don't have to do A. Plan of Conservation and Development, we just went over that. Status report of various projects?
I have several.
Okay.
Just back to A, is at some point we'll need to appoint someone to the PIC committee after the plan's adopted, be my guess.
Sure.
Change lists here. Okay, I issued a violation notice to 2399 Main Street where the OC Restaurant is. This is right adjacent to the wetlands next to where the Vessel Apartments were proposed. The owners of that property at 2399 had hired a landscaper to clean up brush along the edge of the parking lot, and they kind of went
Too far.
a little overzealous and pushed everything into the woods right up to the wetland flags. I issued the notice, the landscape contractor was in the next day talking to me, resolved it over the weekend and seeded the disturbed areas, so I left it at that. MDC water main project has started. That's from Parsonage Street all the way down Silas Dean Highway, Town Line Road, and continues up Silas Dean in Weathersfield. They're starting at Parsonage Street and working north. I had mentioned this a while ago and showed you a plan. It's all within the road itself, and they are exempt, so no permit was needed. So you'll be seeing a lot of activity there. Washington Street sidewalks were just awarded the bid for that, construction of those sidewalks, and that's from Old Main to Pratt's, or Glassberry Ave. Century Hill sidewalks, Phase 1 is going out to bid real soon. That'll be taking place this summer. Elm Street sidewalks are hoping to be going out to bid shortly, to be constructed this summer is our hope. We're finalizing plans for connecting sidewalks on Hayes Road near the pond, as well as replacing the pond outlet. And while we were surveying out there, we noticed two of the discharge pipes that go to the pond need to be replaced. So we're going to probably have an application in on behalf of the town for our next meeting for that.
Okay.
We're going to just put everything under one application.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was brought up to us one
Yeah.
other time, yeah. And
Well, we talked about the outlet, and
Right.
then the sidewalks came up, so, so we've got all our field work done, the plans are nearly
Okay.
done. The State Department of Transportation, their District 1 headquarters and their paving lab, they're doing a new building on West Street. They're breaking ground. They might have broken ground already. If not, it'll be very soon for their new headquarters. They're combining the two. It's where the paving lab is. It's behind there, so you'll be seeing activity there. We did have discussion with their engineers because there's a big culvert that goes across the state property and then under West Street, and it turns out it's the state's culvert, it's not ours.
Okay.
So, which was nice for a change. I issued a Class A permit for 406 Parsonage Street. That was included in your packet. It's a small addition to an existing house, and basically the addition was, it is within the upland review area, but the addition's going where there's an existing patio on the house. So there's really nothing significant. I just required erosion controls, which we require anyways. 50 Dividend Road that we discussed a while ago, the repairs have been completed. He had to touch up a few spots when spring came. He did that, and he contacted me before doing anything. And I went out there, and everything looks good. Community gardens at the farm. They're meeting now discussing this in the other room, but we've gone through a bunch of things. We had, originally there was an area indicated on the plans for community farm, and after the demolition and remediation, there was a thought to change the location of the farms over to the west side of the property. So we had, from the original testing from the phase 1 and 2 evaluations, we had testing for that area. We ran it through another environmental professional, and they had come up with a consensus that if we amend the soil, there was high arsenic levels, naturally occurring arsenic, but high levels. So we were going to amend the soil and do the gardens over there because it was a little more convenient to do it there. Now, the farmland preservation and the groups associated with the farm or with the gardens, they had some input from a professor at UMass concerned about those levels. So now we're going back. It sounds like we're going back to the original area, and that's the area that's got wetlands on both sides. It was an active field when Mr. Straska was farming it, but looking to go back to that area. We did have a meeting regarding the access road and bridge into the industrial park down off of Old Forge by Lower Dividend Pond. The culverts beneath the road that go back into the pit. They're still working on the plans, resolving a few things, but that will be coming in probably, they're meeting with the state this month. Probably be coming before us August or September at the earliest would be my guess. That's what I have for various projects.
Not too many. Okay, open space?
I've got a question.
Question, I'm sorry.
Quick
Go ahead,
question, if
Derek.
that's okay. So there were high arsenic levels on the west side of the community farm, but there was also a plan to amend the soil.
Yeah.
Would amending the soil not address the arsenic problem?
It would lower the levels, basically dilute the soil, with other soil. We looked into using materials that we have to amend the soil, and we did not want to bring anything onto that site without testing it first. And so some of the materials we had did not test well enough to use as an amendment.
Okay.
So rather than purchasing topsoil somewhere else, certified topsoil, we're going to, we did have tests in the area that was formally designated, not as many, but we did have tests, and it was fine.
Okay.
And it was actively farmed, before. This area the area to the west there were some vehicles stored there as well.
Right. Are there any concerns for the wetlands in this other site? I know it was actively farmed before, so it's already,
Yeah, it's agricultural, the use would be agricultural in nature, so there's no concerns. And if you look out there now, our highway department had constructed a wood chip berm on the west where we were going to go on the western end. We'll likely be doing something similar in this other area, because there's an intermittent water course that goes through there. We would have a wood chip berm, and we'll probably put wood chips down around the perimeter of that area to keep the woods from creeping in on the field, so.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a quick question. If we could kind of back the truck up a little bit to the 406 Parsonage Street parcel.
Yep.
If you look at the NRCS map, it shows a huge band of bash silt loam wetland soil type through that whole area. And, I mean, best I can tell, it looks like their proposed addition is maybe like 35 to 40 feet to the, either the water course or the, well, I think on the map, they just actually showed edge of water course. They didn't even flag the wetlands on that site.
Well, when the house, it was a relatively new house with a wetland
Sure.
line and an upland review area shown on it.
But I mean, with grading, I mean, I don't know what they're proposing to do. I mean, I would think that that would want to go through the commission as an application and have our review of it.
Even though it was replacing the existing patio?
If it's within the 100-year, if it's within the 100-foot review area, I mean, it's within our regulatory review.
It is. I took it upon myself, and I apologize if
I just don't want to start a precedent of,
Okay.
like, the town is deciding what applications we review or not review.
understood.
On the other hand, I made the comment to Scott, I'm like, you would never know there was wetlands there. And then I realized who I was talking to, and yes, he would know there's a wetlands there.
No, well, I wanted to bring it to your attention. And
Yeah.
I understand your point, and
So I don't know if anybody wants to see it, but that's the map that showed, the purple's the wetland. And then I don't even know if
Whole
there's,
house is in the
I mean, it's a floodplain soil. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's a floodplain
Well, there's the-
elevation there.
it's the water, it's the same water course. You can see it from behind Dunkin' Donuts.
I think the issue is that in Connecticut, floodplain soils are wetlands.
Right. So likely there's some, all I'm saying is likely there's some wetlands associated with this water course. And on the map, they just show edge of water course, so.
Okay.
Let's, can you just set it up with the homeowner? Let's just take a look at it. If you agree with that? Let's just take a look at it. If you could just set it up with the homeowner, and maybe we can just do a quick walkthrough, just to put, like Scott's mind at ease, and even Melissa's, she's now, I see him, the wheels turning. Nothing against, it'll be, hard to pull.
Because this is our only chance to like have them put up placards that say, conservation area and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And if we don't look at these
Well, there's
things.
no conservation area there.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm saying like a wetland, whatever the placards you want to put up.
This came in as a building permit application, and I saw the activity within the upland review area.
Yeah.
And I saw that it was adjacent to the existing driveway as well as a patio. It's hard to read on these small maps, but there was a stone patio where that addition was going. So, I mean, the activity had already occurred in that area.
Yeah.
So that was my logic.
And I mean, I'm sure there's been a lot of filling and things have changed over the years, but
How long ago was it?
it shouldn't, we just shouldn't pick and choose which applications we want to, have them do wetland permits.
Understood. I'm just saying that their building permit's probably been granted, because I did do the permit, Class A permit.
How, Melissa's got a point. When was this house built? Do you remember? Do you know?
I'd have to look, it wasn't,
I'd be curious to see what sort of notes on the wetlands or whatever would have been from then, if there's any file or anything you could find. Maybe you could share that I don't know if that would be a violation of any sort of meeting if you share it in an email or something.
Oh, 6 personage. Okay.
Can't read this plan at all. Glasses on too.
I'm just double checking real quick.
the
Subdivision of property.
yeah, that's a reference map from the 60s, but that's just for the subdivision of property. But for the the house itself is, there was a previous plan in the file, because I did check the previous. I can get some.
Yeah, this was built
information.
in 72, so it's been there a while. Yeah,
So it was right around when the wetlands regs were coming into play. They may not have even
Grandfathered
ever
in.
flagged the wetlands.
yeah, right, yeah. Yeah.
David, do you know if this is on a slab or are they putting in the foundation?
I don't know. Well, this, I think that's on, it's a crawl space, I think. for-
Okay.
Crawl space, okay.
Yeah, so they're not digging down deep and disturbing.
Right.
There's no piles of fill or whatever you want, call it, from excavating.
Okay, all right. Are you okay with considering the year of the,
Well, I mean, whatever you all think. I mean, I just saw that, that this addition was gonna be like 35, 40 feet from a wetland watercourse.
But I mean, it was already there. They just
Yeah.
enclosing it essentially. So what would be our concern with that versus what was already there? I mean, there's only so much we can't make them go
Right.
backwards. You know, like,
okay.
No,
All right,
we'll
yeah,
just have
don't-
any, from now, moving forward, anything within that.
Yeah, just reach out, yeah. Yeah, no problem. It's okay, Dave, don't worry about it. You know, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's right through Valley Brook, okay. Okay, open space, anything?
They're meeting tonight, and
That's right, yep. Legislation?
there is a, Derek actually brought to my attention, House Bill 7174, I believe it is. Basically, it's act concerning riparian areas, and it's basically to establish riparian buffer zones, protect fishways along certain water passages, and require certain insurance fees for environmental measures. Reading through the bill, I had a hard time finding anything about the insurance fees, but it's basically establishing buffer areas from, from water courses as opposed to from a wetland line.
Yeah.
So, if that makes sense.
yeah, it's making it a state regulated instead of just a
Like some
local.
towns, well, and it's 100-foot
Yeah.
upland area. Some towns have less than 100-foot
Yeah.
upland review area. And I
wanna change
think that's really what the point of the bill was, to make it consistent of a minimum of
And
100
some
feet
towns
for
have bigger buffers off of like perennial water courses or whatever than, say, wetland boundaries.
Yeah, some have 200
Yeah,
from wetlands and waters.
and some have separate vernal
Yes, yeah,
setbacks.
yep.
It looks like it's gone through and will be up for, to be scheduled for a vote, I believe. It's the current I checked the status today, and that's what it looked like.
I think the climate bill too also passed. So I did hear that. So I don't know if that has any implications for us as well. I know previously, last year, there was a provision about like the com members have to be trained, have to be all trained, and I don't know if the new one has that.
Yeah, I think that withered on the vine.
I think it did, but a new one came through this year and was moving through from the emails I've seen. I don't know if it's completely passed yet, but it's one to track too.
Okay. Conferences?
I did attend the Public Works Association New England chapter, their conference in early April as well.
Okay. Correspondence, communications?
We did receive a notification for treatment of a pond at 72 Springbrook Drive, which we from the contractor that's going to be doing it, for the DEP notification.
Okay.
And then, the Great Meadows Conservation Trust newsletter, if you didn't see it, it's from March. It has a, front page feature of the community farm.
Okay. Other business?
I don't have any.
None? Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Hearing none? Have a good week.
Huzzah.
Have a good time. Mom.